I'm Bruce Gordon, author of the book The Spirit of Attack. When I joined the Air Force in 1958 and got a security clearance, I read a number of very interesting confidential reports on what the Russians were up to during the Cold War. Two of those stories particularly attracted me. They were about spies. An Air Force electrician who was assigned to USAF headquarters in Berlin, which was surrounded completely by communist East Germany, got in trouble, and his commander took away a stripe as punishment. He was incensed and felt he had been treated unfairly, and he decided to defect to the communists. In those days, it was easy to just walk from West Berlin into East Berlin, and so he did so, and he walked up to the Russian headquarters and told him that he would like to defect. They treated him as a very important person, and they were very interested in him. They told him that the first thing, though, is he had to go right back to his unit and before they missed him, and be a good airman, do exactly what he was told for a couple of weeks while they got ready to handle him. So he did that. He went right back to his unit and behaved perfectly well until they got a hold of him. He applied for and got extended leave, saying he was going to go to Paris and enjoy himself. Instead, he walked across to East Berlin, to the Russian headquarters, and soon they had him on a plane headed inside Russia to a spy training school. In the spy training school, they showed him many electronic devices and showed him how to operate them. They also had some Russian women operators who were very interesting, but they weren't quite as beautiful as he had imagined. He complained about that. Pretty soon, they sent him back to Berlin, and he reported back to his unit. His job was simple. When the Russians asked him to bug an office or conference room, he would go to the room and tell them that he was an electrician, which he was. He had all the credentials. And he said that there was something wrong with the wall plug, the electric wall plug in their office, and he needed to fix it. They'd say, great, go ahead. So he would take out the perfectly good power receptacle from the wall, and he would insert a new one. And this one had a radio transmitter in it that was powered by the electrical power supply from the building. And when he got it all connected, he would say some code words to it, and he would hear car horn honking in a parking lot in a code that told him that he had got it right. He'd button it all up, and he'd go on to the next room. He placed a good number of these wall plug bugs in Air Force offices and conference rooms in Berlin. This made him feel rather uncomfortable, and he really didn't like doing this, so he decided he'd just quit the Air Force and go home and do something else. So he quit. At the end of his tour, he went back to the States and went to a big city and got a job, and he thought everything was going to be okay. But then the Russians contacted him in the U.S. They said that he should do a few things for them that would be simple, and otherwise they would tell his boss that he was actually a Russian agent and he'd get fired, and they'd tell his family and he'd be disgraced. So he said, okay, won't do much. What you got for me? The Russians had some immigrants, people in the U.S., that they wanted to make feel that they were being watched all the time. So he was given an address, and he would drive to the place, and he would drive slowly past the place several times, go around the block and drive past again, and then maybe he'd honk his horn a few times. Then he'd come around and he'd stop, and he'd just sit in his car outside this house for 20 minutes watching the house. And then suddenly he'd start up the car and drive off just as fast as he could. He did this for a number of places. He didn't know who lived there. He didn't know anything about them. Pretty soon, though, he began to feel that he was being trailed. He began to think that there was somebody in the FBI that was tracking him. A couple of times, he thought he saw people taking pictures of him. He thought he saw the dull flash of an infrared camera going off. So he got nervous, and he finally turned himself into the FBI and told them the whole story. The Air Force article told me that this was a classic case of taking a person who was disaffected. He was angry with his commanders, and he wanted revenge. The Russians like to find people like that and turn them into agents. The next story was about how they used sex traps to catch people. An American businessman went to Romania on business, and while he was there, he met a beautiful Romanian girl, and pretty soon he had a torrid affair going with her. And then one day there was a knock on his door, and two Romanian intelligence officials were there, and they had an envelope, as they said that they had pictures of him with this Romanian woman, and that if he didn't cooperate with them, they would send the pictures to his boss and to his wife and friends back in the States. The American businessman said, well, I don't know. He says, let me see those pictures. So they sat down at the table, and they got the envelope out, and they pulled out these pictures. He looked at the pictures. He says, wow, those are fabulous pictures. He said, can I have some for my pornography collection? The Romanian guys were so startled that they jumped up and left the room, and he never heard anything more from them. I liked the American businessman's story best because he turned the tables on the Romanian intelligence agents. He had the spirit of attack.